Welcome back here in Frannz Club for the first day of the Most Wanted Music Conference in 2022. I hope you all enjoyed your lunch or found your way here beautifully. I mean, I know some people in the audience and I can see you looking beautiful. Let me, first of all, introduce one thing that's very important to us this year, the awareness briefing of our convention. You may have noticed how awareness is very central to our proceedings here. There are posters everywhere as we are trying to create a safer space and environment for everybody involved while being as accessible as possible. So we are all different. Please take care, mind your boundaries, be careful to engage in consensual interactions, and also check your privileges if you feel uncomfortable or experience discrimination or harassment. We have awareness staff on site. They're usually visible by their backpacks with a big yellow A on them. You can also go to the awareness poster. There's a number that you can call or message if you experience anything that shouldn't be happening, and there is an awareness point also at Palais. Also, one thing that's new, it's a social experiment that we're actually trying, are the red cards that you see on various tables and also on the counter over there. If you hear something discriminatory against any marginalized group being said on stage, you are free to raise your red card. I will then interrupt the talk that is happening. We will address this issue together. And well, let's see how that goes. My name is Aishan Malonda. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a musician, singer, songwriter, activist, author, and today's host. And our next panel is a roundtable and a big one at that. Empathetic storytelling, co-creating music, film, and media tech will focus on the need to collaborate more at an earlier stage in set disciplines. This discussion has been curated in cooperation with HARPA, Nordic Film Music Days, and Nordic Film Composers Award. That's a really wicked long name. And is live streamed to this event, Nordic Film Music Days 365. And for this, please welcome to the stage Stephanie von Beauvais, lecturer at BIM Institute and music video director. Kaspar, Kaae, film composer, Lenka, Morávková, artist, female business entrepreneur, Haraldur, Thrastarson, composer and sound designer, Florian, Weghorn, program manager at Berlinale Talents, and this panel's host, Jamie Thomas.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Lovely to see you here, and also to those on joining us online. So today is an open discussion between the six of us sat here about the need to collaborate better at an earlier stage at the intersection of music, film, and media technology. So we have different perspectives here on stage. So we have some perspectives from industry, from education, and also from artistic practice. It's a roundtable format, so I won't be the one asking all the questions, hopefully. And so, yeah, invite the panel to jump in and contribute when they feel they have something they want to say. I'll try and provide some structure to the conversation by splitting the focus into two sections. The first section will try to clarify some of the terminology being used. And so if we go back up to the overview, this is a discussion, a roundtable about the need to collaborate better at an earlier stage of the intersection of music, film, and media tech. In times of converging media that offer spectacular new opportunities to music composers and producers, how do we enable media creatives to make better use of music for their storytelling, and composers to leverage the superpower of music, emotion, and with more self-evidence? So it's a big, big topic, I think. So we're going to try, first of all, to clarify what that statement might mean, and from a range of different perspectives. And in the second section, we'll attempt to propose some ways forward for us as both educators and practitioners. We're going to top and tail that with an opening and closing round. let's jump in. So yeah, just in the check-in round, I'll start with you, Stephanie, and then we'll go down the line, but hopefully we won't stick in that order. Yeah, please introduce yourself and describe what you're bringing to the conversation today.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. My pronouns are she, her. And, well, I think what I can add here is that me being a music video director for over 25 years now, having shot on film in this little filmy cloud and now, like, you know, serving the whole internet area, kind of. And on the other hand, I'm also a lecturer for BIM Institute, and BIM Institute is now established in Berlin as an institution for pop culture and also as a film faculty. And I'm basically a lecturer for both. And I'm just coming from a shooting what we had yesterday where I invited music students to come over to film students and film students shooting music students performing and discussing about the connection between sound and vision. So yeah, I think there's a lot that I can share.
Thank you. My name is Florian Weghorn. I'm representing here today the Berlinale Talents Program, or the Berlinale in general, which I think you're aware of, hopefully, as the film festival. But it's also a place where we deal and work with filmmakers in the longer run, and also even without only presenting their films. And Berlinale Talents in particular is a program where we gather 200 of those filmmakers from around the world, around the globe. They apply for it actually, and they're coming not only from more than 70 countries, but also from 14 different fields of work. So it's quite unique that it not only addresses the, let's say, usual storytellers, meaning the directors or those who are connected directly to what most people consider film, actors, producers, and so on, but also the composers, for example, the sound designers, and also actors in other fields of work. Practically everyone. You can imagine it as a quite diverse table of different perspectives, and which brings me to the point why I'm so happy to be here today, because it also brings us to a wider understanding of what storytelling actually is. As something which many people contribute to as the one big thing that we then call film. Thank you. Oh, and Haraldur, we know each other, yes. So you can tell us a little bit more about Berlinale Talents.
Yeah, so my name is Haraldur Thrastarson. I'm a composer and sound designer. I have a classical music background and was playing the trombone since 12 to 25 or so, and found myself somehow getting more and more into film. And right now I'm in this phase where I'm either calling myself a composer, which I don't like to do even, or a sound designer. And I'm lost in those two, but I feel like they can kind of correlate and you can do it at the same time. And that's maybe the thing that I'm most obsessed with these days. Yeah, I met Florian through Talents program. It was an incredible program with a lot of interesting people. Right now, actually, I'm working with Laura, who was there. We do this Netflix film together. So it's incredible. It's already paying off. So I recommend it. And thank you. Yeah, let's have a good talk.
Hello, my name is Lenka Morávková. I come from the Czech Republic, but I'm also partly based in Los Angeles on artistic visa. I started off as a music critic. I was writing over 10 years about experimental electronic music, but in the same time, I was a scholar. I studied a lot of humanity-oriented things like electronic culture, semiotics, anthropology, ethnomusicology, and in the same time, I was a music producer and releasing first albums. And at the end, from this triangle, a few years ago, I chose one path. When I was a PhD in the US, they make me choose, and I had to do that choice. And it's been a few years what my profession, the only profession, is being a music producer, composer, female music business entrepreneur. And I'm running my artistic projects. One is Bohemian Crystal Instrument, which is around one of a kind sound sculpture from glass. But I like to be involved in all the other media. I like to direct my music videos. I like to do a lot of things with lights and lasers. I kind of like want to be involved in every artistic part of whatever is happening around my projects and be like a CEO of this whole little universe I'm creating. So maybe that's why I got invited to this round, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Hello, I'm Kaspar. I'm Danish, live part-time in Berlin, but also Copenhagen, and I have been doing film music since the last 10 years at least, internationally, and working with directors that were very young, but also my parents' age, which is up there now. And I have also been teaching at the Conservatory of Southern Denmark, where I was educated as a film composer, and in a school called Johan Borups in Copenhagen, where I also study production and film music. And I think I'm here because of I've been thinking a lot about like how do we actually teach something so unique as personal expression. I don't think we can teach it, but we can at least develop it. So that's my angle, I think, on this conversation.
Nice one, thanks. My name's Jamie Thomas. I'm the education lead at Catalyst Institute of Creative Arts and Technology, based at Funkhaus here in Berlin. Sorry, I have a bit of a problem with my voice today. We run courses in both film and music, so across two separate schools, both undergraduate and postgraduate programs. And I'm currently working on developing a music and sound for visual media bachelor's program, which is going to start next September. And so I'm kind of right in the middle of this conversation right now. And Kaspar and I have actually met each other before, and we've spent some time trying to figure out what the best way to teach and run a course of this nature might be. And so it's going to be really interesting for me just hearing your perspectives on some of the extremely difficult questions that I've prepared. So we're going to start with this clarification round. So we've split this talk into two, and I'll try and keep time, but I'm notoriously bad at timekeeping. But I do have a big clock there. And so, in terms of clarifying what we mean by some of these things, in that text for this conversation today, it speaks about us being in a time, in the time of converging media. What does that mean? And what does that mean in relation to you and your practice? I'm going to leave an awkward silence until somebody chooses to fill it.
Should I start?
Please.
Everybody's looking so friendly to me. Well, I think it's an interesting question in that way, because media for me always has different aspects, right? I mean, it's not this one genre. It's I don't know. It's so many things at once. So, and of course, and then we have this funny expression, multimedia. But in the end, I think that media or film and music can kind of come together in this thing called internet quite well in so many different aspects. And I think there's a big difference between trying to document or to show how the music is being made and how the musicians are feeling about it and how it is interpreted. And how, on the other hand, of course, music is interpreting film. So I think it's rather the approach. And then there's the connection between these ways of expression, which end up to be kind of a media in a way. What would you think?
do we do it in a round again? So because you split us into groups, but of course I can say so. I always have it, because I'm not a music composer and I wouldn't even call myself an artist, but from the position of the one who's bringing together people, I see that converging media, in my sense, also means converging or making people meet differently and work together differently. And that is something that is still to be worked on. So I can later on tell you an example from the production design area where we're currently trying to converge people by bringing together different disciplines who are actually doing rather the same thing for the same film, but separate each other and their fields of work quite clearly. But I think that's not the future, or that's not necessarily the thing. It's not that we all do all the same, but the way how we nowadays bring in different perspectives when we sit on a table all together is also very much, I think, an idea on how film can, or music, or whatever we are talking about, can work together, can converge different perspectives on the same thing. And this is difficult because all of us grew up with this idea, oh, I become a composer, or I become this and I become that, and I'm representing this position, and I'm also excluded from that kind of other part of the creative process. So we need to change the systems first, so that really this conversion of the different can also come to a fruitful point. But we can jump, so we shouldn't jump into roles like this.
Well, I think thinking about that question, not knowing if it's an answer, but I think that the pace of how we produce today and how the formats are, like, you know, not like only feature, but like shorts for internet, for it kind of forces us into also think differently in terms of, you know, music that would work 10 years ago doesn't necessarily work the same way today because we decode differently. I think the load of information that we get makes the table even bigger to find answers. I completely lost track now. I had something else. Maybe I come back.
Okay, I'll try to find your track and then you can move it. Probably what I wanted to say that we are living in 2022, and us as artists, we have all those tools. It's not only music and sound, but we can go way beyond the music, and a lot of us do it in, let's say, in branding, design, clothing, lights, visuals, whatever we use for expressing ourselves and make our music more alive, or like give it another, you know, perspective. And I think like probably the traditional way of an artist or a musician is not that valid nowadays. I think most of us are like hybrid artists, a lot of us. I lost the track.
There's some kind of curse on that side.
You go and then I follow.
Yeah, I think where I lost myself at some point was something about that, like, I think, and I now of course speak from an educational perspective, but like I think the level of communication between the different fields of sound design and editing and directing and music is so much more important, because it goes so fast. We don't have the same time to actually sit and pick our belly buttons and find out how do we want to express this. So I think that level of communication is so important, and I think the pace that I talked about earlier opens up those doors, I think, actually, to learn new ways to, for example, design schools that are put close to each other. So it's not small, you know, seminars once a semester, but actually has a continuous workflow. I think that's what's happening, or what has to happen at least.
That's what we experience at BIM now. Trying to follow this sound and vision combination with the music school and the film school, and we are just practicing this, just starting this, and every day there are new options where you can converge, like yesterday what I was just describing, and it's really interesting. Like what you said, the system needs to change, or also the approach to what the system is. needs to change, I think, in this aspect. Actually, I'm a Berlinale Talent Campus alumni from the campus in, I don't know, 2004 or something. And I applied with music videos, and they went for short films. They were labeled as short films because nobody understood what music video is in this context. So I think that's the point. Maybe today it wouldn't matter anymore, I think that's totally right to kind of be more open, or maybe we don't have to label stuff so much anymore.
Yeah, true. So by the way, it moved on from short film to short form, which is exactly reacting on what you've just said. So saying everything that takes the amount of work of a short film is eligible. So to open up us a little bit more, also us meant as festivals, as an institution, towards the flexibility or conversion, or however we want to call it, of nowadays lives. I would be interested, so because we are speaking about schools, environments, festivals, and so on, but whether this really reflects also in the, let's say, professional and business context, when it comes back to the point where a composer is hired, and then you say, oh, I might love to do something else, and can I also be in this and that part? And then they say, no, you have your strict position, and we don't want you to be involved in the storytelling in a wider sense.
Yeah, I think what is changing with this converging of media is that roles have changed a lot in film. I think some of them have specified a lot, and there's people who do just, this one very niche specific thing, like a focus puller or something, And then as a composer, I've seen it so that I did a short course on film music when I studied in Amsterdam, and the teacher there was a very old school guy, and he said it used to be so that you would show up to the studio with a score, and that's your job. And this, of course, doesn't work like this anymore at all. Now the composer has become a producer, arranger, orchestrator, all the things that are included in the process of making the music and mixing it by themselves and all this stuff. So I guess, maybe it's not totally connected to this concept, but I think it's a part of it for sure. And this has been changing a lot.
Yeah, and I think that aspect also takes it further on in terms of composers would be higher up in the hierarchy earlier. Now I think sound design has taken that place more and more. I feel that sound design is a part of the musical score in some ways, which I find insanely interesting. But the music is also up against, protected/unprotected or versus unprotected music, which I also find a part of this new era of broadcasters are actually because they work so fast and they don't have limited amount of money, so actually music also becomes something I would find even more secondary in the production side, because broadcasters are actually saying you can only use from this library. So the whole thing about creating something unique for it's the opposite of scoring a scene, is actually taking stems from a library and just be make it work, which I find also an interesting development, a little sad as well, to be honest.
I think for me, one of the good, positive aspects of convergence and, going beyond music is the collaboration with people. Because otherwise, being a producer and musician is a pretty lonesome job. I'm stuck home, producing something weird. And then it's an opportunity for me to get out of my bubble and we kind of create new thing with other people. I get them influence me, I'll influence them. It's like a back and forth conversation in arts and in any other aspect. And I just think this is one of the biggest positive sides of this convergence for me. And also even though anything I do is based on sound and music, I really truly enjoy the other parts, maybe sometimes even more, because it's when I'm in the music field, there is a pressure. I need to deliver a top thing. While if I go somewhere else, I'll do like design. Now, let's say, for example, we are developing this laser interactive bracelet. So I'm like into design, interactivity, light, and lasers, and I can go nuts, you know, and I can go wrong. I can go like the good way, but also I don't care that much, which brings so much lightness and joy. Going to like unreal, new kingdoms which I have never experienced, you know. So for me, this is like a big, you know, advantage.
Yeah, I could speak to that point as well, just from a kind of artistic perspective, and also from our approach at Catalyst. But yeah, this idea of converging media and what it means. Surprisingly, we have a very divergent set of answers here, actually. In that they're coming from very different perspectives, from an artistic perspective, from an industry and pipeline is what I hear from you, Florian. And then for me it's about whether we're really looking at predicting what's going to come up. And as an artist, we have this kind of a huge amount of freedom to explore different crafts, and there's never been an easier time to do so. And so, yeah, these different artistic practices also feel somewhat shared in their approach. These technological obstacles are not there in place anymore, and these role definitions are becoming more loosely defined. People seem to be more able to move between different roles at different times and into different areas of work in order to find the best way to express some kind of creative voice. And so, for me, that's kind of the most interesting part about these, seeing these different medias and different industries converging. But yeah, what's kind of brought us to this place, and what changes are you seeing at the moment, and what new opportunities are arising from this? And we've heard a few points mentioned on this, but I'd like to go deeper into that if possible.
I would like to add in a perspective here what you just mentioned about craft and maybe expertise and the opportunity with going digital. Everything is there. I always feel like in teaching or doing workshops, all this, we have these like online experts out there who are using these little devices every minute. And on the other hand, like filmmaking and making music is a craft. And of course, these young people are doing things instinctively, intuitively. But on the other hand, I think now our kind of position is to keep the craft alive and to kind of make them use their intuitions with an awareness, and not only to throw out something to the world, but be aware of what's your output. And what's your artistic output, and to not just, produce a mass of media every day, because that's what we do, but to be aware of also maybe creative or artistic aspects about it if we have them. And of course, there are a lot of people who are not creative and not artists who also use the same media. And the thing is, where's the difference? I think there's a small gap now. It's getting less, it's not the artist up there and the non-artist somewhere else. No, we're all using the same media. So what does that mean? And I really want to. I'm really always fighting for this. Like, there's frames, there, frame sizes. There's that the basic stuff, how film works. And if we forget about that, then we forget about how to tell a story.
And in a way,
I think probably
sorry.
like that means democracy. You know, everyone can use any type of media and express themselves freely, and it's up to us if we will be judgmental or not. But also, honestly, from my perspective, I don't feel that I'm expert in any field I'm doing. I sing, but I'm no singer. You know, I produce music, but I have no education in music production or scoring or anything like that. I do new media arts, but I haven't ever studied that. I work in Maximus P, but type of, but I need somewhere more experts with if I want to finish it. So then I think it's that's this freedom, liberty, and democracy that everyone has those tools now, and it's just up to them how far they push it, where do they go, if they really craft it at the end, And I think this is beautiful.
Yeah, but I think you're an expert in not being an expert. So I think I think you definitely have a point here. So it's not about, when we speak about this freedom. So it's not about, okay, everyone can become a composer nowadays. So like you said, everyone has the opportunity to become and test it out, because the technical side is easier and more accessible. Still quite complicated when it comes up to the real stuff. So because not so many films are made on the iPhone, although many people do say nowadays everything is done there, but that's not true. So there is still also a difference in between these different ways of production. But nevertheless, this, let's say, equalization doesn't necessarily mean that everyone now can do it. You have that expertise in saying, okay, I have the knowledge how to explore the different areas, and this makes you an outstanding and very special artist nowadays. Some others don't have that expertise. So when we teach something on schools, probably we teach how to become an expert of not being a non-expert. So that I think is a good concept. But still, if we come back to the business side and to the industry, probably people won't hire you for that. So they probably will hire you for something else. They will hire you for, like you said, deliver a score. So here I see a contradiction.
Yes and no, I would say. I actually somewhat disagree. I do feel that the storytelling comes from something that's not within the field only. I think the field is a tool to not put the brakes in, but actually you get the job because someone trusts you. And I feel that what I learned at the film school in Denmark, which I also pass on to my students, is actually that you also enter a space now where you have to learn about solidarity, responsibility, and when people then trust you, then they take you in and make you a part of their story. Like, a lot of directors are very, how can I say, it's their child project, so they need someone they can trust, not someone who can do arpeggios that they learned at conservatory or play the violin only. It's something else than that. And I think and that is the most important getting into the art schools, is actually that that you get that kind of common ground, common language and understanding, because then you will get the job. I often ask myself, why am I making all these films? Because I am not the best piano player or guitar player, but it has to be found somewhere else, and I don't know what the answer is. And the fact that I don't know is what I like most about the job.
I totally agree. It's a lot about communication, solidarity, trust. The aspect of craft is one thing. I think the other aspect is also how is whatever we put out there being perceived, and there should be also what I consider in teaching, which I think is really important for me, is to make my students aware of how whatever they put out there is being perceived, and to kind of take over the strings and not just put out anything and be astonished why people don't understand what you're doing, but to have this awareness that you can shift people's perception into a certain direction if you do this and this. This awareness and approach, I think that's also, if everybody has that, we will be aware about discrimination. We will be aware about racism. We will be aware about so many things if we just think about the perception of what we are putting out there. And I think this is also our responsibility to point in there, especially because we are producing so much media today. It should be in our responsibility to show what the reaction on this is, or the awareness in both music and film, or whatever there is out there.
And that's kind of something that's controlled, right? As a composer, you're actually telling a story through sound. How do you approach that?
I feel like every project is so different, and there's not really a general way of doing anything. It depends a lot, of course, with the dialogue that you have with the director. I think that's the main thing in how you come to tell the story in the way that you do, with what instruments you use, or what kind of melodies you go for, or what kind of textures. And you start to be a bit dependent on that, which can be maybe not the best thing at all times, that you're kind of depending, that you're kind of only thinking what the director wants. And this is something that for me has become an issue, and for many of my colleagues. And then you just have to step back and realize, hey, I can put my foot down and say, I want to tell the story in this way. But of course, in film, it's a dictatorship, and it's very hard to do that all the time. And then just no one wants to work with you. But yeah, does that answer it? Is that good enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, a few of you have picked up there on the way that we might approach these types of topics from an educational perspective. And obviously, Stephanie, you've got some experience in thinking about this, and Kaspar also. But I'm interested from everyone here. It would seem to me that there is perhaps a future that exists that's quite unknown when it comes to the convergence of these different medias. And so people will talk about the metaverse. I don't yet know exactly what that is, or how that will feel, or if we will really exist inside a metaverse. I know that there are conversations happening here, and I think there was one happening this morning about specifically about this. But I would say that our future within that kind of media sphere is still fairly unknown. How do we prepare students for that?
I don't know. How we prepare students for the unknown future in the meta world?
Well, not specifically the meta world.
Okay.
But I mean that might be a fairly concrete example. I mean it's concrete, and it's both concrete and very abstract to us, I think, at the moment.
Yeah.
But it is definitely unknown. So how do we go about preparing students for jobs that don't yet exist?
I mean, I think if I can just go back a little bit to something less abstract, because how I would prepare my students to any future is, first of all, to create some kind of safe space where you don't, I think diligent is the right word, in terms of it's just music, creates some years of their lives where making mistakes or finding out that this is the steps that you take. Also, I think then it becomes easier to apply to that in the real world. I think that's a very important thing to do. But yeah, and then of course also I think that's why I mentioned the whole library thing, and how that develops. Also, they also need to learn a lot about the non-musical stuff, the not sexy stuff, which is contracts and rights and copyright, all of that stuff. I think which under my education was not structured well enough you know. So sitting doing Sibelius cue sheets is super nice, but it's not really a weapon towards a producer, an American producer, for example, that has like way different standards than Europeans have, for example. So I think that kind of entrepreneurship is really important for the future. On an artistic level, I do find that, you know, we also need to believe in ourselves and the choices that we make. So the choices you make as a composer might be very different from mine, but still nothing is better or worse than anything, you know. So I think also, like, you know, believe that your storytelling is the right, and I think that takes time to you know, integrate in yourself, that you know that you know the fear of, like, you know, doing wrong is like within yourself most of all. It was a stupid answer maybe, but I think that was my thought about it.
There are no stupid answers.
You have fun. But I think we are adapting to new challenges every day now, and I feel like the younger generation is really like well set off with that. They're like used to be doing that since they were a kid. They really grew up in a pretty different world, and they're just, these tools are their, you know, their home kind of. So I'm not that worried about that. On the other hand, talking about education, I like from my perspective, from the Czech Republic, there is not much of like you know, music education which would go really beyond traditional music. While when I was studying in the US, I was at UCLA for 6 months, and then I went to PhD in ethnomusicology and digital composition. So then I realized that, you know, they're really well preparing their students for life out there, which is hardcore in LA. Like that's a battle, you know, it's a survival, and you better make it or you're out of there and you move somewhere else. So that we would have classes on legal issues with music. We would have classes on music business. We would work on our portfolios, deliver it, comment on it. We would have classes combined with movie composers. So there was a, you know, we would have to deliver one score together and a film, or with dancers. So it was like a whole complex education, way beyond just the creative part. Notation as well, that was a crazy one, you know, and doing mock-ups, but you went through all the phases of everything which could be waiting for you at the moment. And of course there will be some other challenges in the future because the world is always changing. But I think at least they're doing pretty good job in like having those kids ready to be on the market and kind of try to make it, you know, and survive. While there are places like, unfortunately, in Czech Republic, I need to say that it's very hard, and we are not like those people are not ready. I do workshops for Czech music industry, for the Czech scene, because I feel there is a lack of that knowledge, there is a lack of education. So I'm helping out as much as I can, but I would love that to be part of the normal, you know, educational curriculum at the universities, which is still not happening.
I think what's very important, and I said so at the Berlinale at least, so we're not a school, so we're not teaching, but the only thing probably that is taught there is the importance of community. So, and the importance of community sounds very vague, and it refers once again to that freedom and we're all together thing. But for a time, or in a time, and I think we all know that, you will know that, which will become a bit more competitive probably in terms of the economical questions and so on. Probably or from our perspective, the community is the only right answer. So instead of teaching people to just accumulate skills for themselves so that they become stronger to fight against the others, which has been a traditional concept of the elite universities, of the elite schools and so on. We think, and I think probably all of us or others here on the table might think that the strength actually lays in sharing and in finding out that we among each other become stronger when we are doing it together. It doesn't mean that we do it all together, but the sheer fact that 12 composers and sound designers are put together in one room at Berlinale Talents is not because we have 12 composers and sound designers and we need to put them in one room. It's because it creates something new. It creates exchange among each other, and also it creates a new way of thinking about yourself as part of something bigger. And that, of course, goes into other disciplines and into the fact that we've said and brought up here in the very beginning when it comes up to collaboration in between the different disciplines. So what we need to learn is how to do and how to create that community and how to actually stick together so that it also becomes productive. So because it's not about hanging out together, it's also about working together. And for example, we nowadays realize that a lot of what a composer, a lot of what a sound designer, a director, whoever is in Berlin does is not actually connected to the films. So they shied that away in the filmographies and the biographies, and they thought, oh, she's probably not a good cinematographer because she only made 2 films in the last 2 years. And then in between, when you read in between the lines of her biography, you found out that she actually built up a community for female cinematographers in Brazil. But she shied it away because she thought, okay, they are only interested in the films. But we raised that up, so because we think this is actually a skill. This is actually something which makes her super outstandingly interesting and also strong, because she built up a gang. And this gang is supporting each other nowadays in work. So again, it's also good for their professional side. But it's something I want to see taught in schools. So how to build up an association, how to build up something to fight for money rights or whatever.
Can I say something to that? I realized a couple of years back that I was always wondering, why are producers so evil? Like, why do they always work against me? We are on the same team. And I realized at some point, it's just ignorance. Like, they don't know what it is. And then I thought, like, oh, but why are composers so badly organized? Because we were brought up with like being ourselves and being rock stars. So I really find, because with schools like changing now, because I found like then you have a seminar for 2 weeks or 1 week, and for many students that can be cool but also a little weird. So I mean, like, but if you have that from the beginning till the end, that producers will understand, but this is the composers, that's where they come from, and this is the editors, this is where they come from, then I think we would see a whole other community in the next decades to come, because we shouldn't work against each other. I usually tell my students that, like, you're not making music now, you're making film. And I think if everybody could have that common perspective on, like, then I think it will also be easier to talk to each other, I think.
I think it's merging roles. I mean, that's what I'm also trying in my teaching, is like when for example, I'm giving workshops for musicians who learn how to direct their own music videos. And of course, not all of them are constantly directing, after my workshop, constantly directing their own videos, but they understand how to talk to a director. I think that's the most important thing. It's network, and also to not stick to this little corner where you're kind of stuck. Also, for example, with my film students now, everybody wants to become a director. But of course, yesterday when we formed the teams, I made merging roles with every take. That we had a new director, and the other ones did the cinematography, or just let them change the perspective. I think that's and also for me, when I started, I didn't even know that film directing would be my profession, and so it's to be open and to trust in what's out there, and I think that's also something which is great. Is I wasn't prepared for being a director because nobody in my family didn't even know what that is, So we have to build up networks, and we have to trust and communicate, because there's constantly new jobs out there, and maybe my job won't be there in 10 years anymore. That's life. So this will always happen, I think. And maybe now the wave is bigger or huger. So how do you prepare for a tsunami? Learn to swim? I don't know. I mean,
Exactly. I think that's a great point. Learn to swim. Mm-hmm. Well, as an example for that, you know, I feel like we can be very honest with our students about. First of all, these students come from 80 different countries around the world. They have very different cultural backgrounds, very different age ranges, and we're honest in the fact that we have really no idea what it is that they're going to end up doing with their lives. We know. We know what our graduates have done, but their path is their own. And I think every year we get a new group of students through that are going to be doing something different. So our responsibility really is to broaden their perspective whilst they're there in an undergraduate program. It's to introduce new ideas and to try to help them find something that they're really passionate about. And then to try to provide an environment that's going to help to train them to overcome challenges that they will undoubtedly face. And so we focus on this learning by doing, on experiential learning, and students work on projects with difficult briefs and difficult questions that they have to work on both together and individually. And as a result, they develop a whole range of different skills. And so we're learning through failure a lot. And by doing that, we're also developing these collaboration skills, communication skills, negotiation skills, how to take risk, how do you develop grit or determination. And yeah, these types of skills are something that you can apply to anything. So it doesn't matter which way you move in life and what it is that you really end up doing, that skill set's going to be of some use to you. And so there might also be flaws to this approach as well. And I think, Florian, you bring up some interesting points today. And yeah, that would be my take on how we try to prepare for an unknown future. Yeah. But yeah, Haraldur.
Yeah, I guess I finished my studies quite recently. It's like four years ago. I was studying university, and what kind of, because it's this idea of community of bringing people from different fields together is very, very beneficial to filmmaking and to a new kind of way of making film and making film together. And it's a Gesamtkunstwerk. It's something that you need everyone to come from every direction of art and design and cinematography, whatever. You need all these people. But I feel the biggest, like maybe the thing that makes kind of a friction in this is that the generation that is still pretty much in control in many TV stations or big production companies, they have this kind of opposite idea where they think, oh, like I said before, and it kind of feels silly if I say it again, but this idea of a film is like you're running a dictatorship. It's like you have the head of the film is the director, and it's his vision, it's what he wants, and you kind of have to follow this. And when I work with people who are maybe 30, 40 years older than I am, then this is always the way to go. And they don't talk so much about this what we're talking about. So yeah, I just want to say, because I felt a very big difference when I finished school and I was doing interesting projects there, working on short films with students and stuff, and then working on my first TV film, where it was very different. I was taking comments from 5 different people that were above me, and they all had their idea. And then the director came in and changed everything again, and it was very chaotic and I didn't feel very collaborative, I would say. Yeah.
Sure, and I think that then connects back to the point that you made, Florian, just about creating communities and also creating new ways of working. And yeah, exploring the potential possibilities there. I'm aware of the time. We have 6 minutes left. I would like to give each one of you a few minutes each to just try to think of any particular takeaway or something that's resonated with you from the talk today.
Yeah, I think we both have a very, all of us have a very, I would say, modern approach to what this is. And I think I've always found that the school in itself as an art format is like a paradox, because we're not going to school here, we're doing research. So I think in terms of being relevant for the next couple of years, I think actually creating those spaces where I am not the one to tell young people how sounds are made. They know a lot more than I do, but I know about creating an environment so they can actually develop. And I think life is like one long development, and I think having this conversation in 10 years would probably be very different from now. So I think, like going away from the school format and looking into the individual is what I've been thinking about during this conversation.
You go, I go later.
Do you want to go?
Yeah, I can also just pick on what you've just said, and I'm very happy that, or thankful that you've done it. So because with everything we've said here today, so I feel that there's a bit of an elephant in the room. So because we haven't mentioned the word that keeps it all in the structure it's hierarchies. And behind hierarchies, there's interests. And it's very understandable that these interests are there. So because producers invest a lot of money, so first and foremost, they want to get this thing done in the way they have the idea brought into the world. So now there's a question if this is a good way. Of course, we can question that, and we've questioned it here. But by talking about freedom within the respective fields, we mainly and mostly represent here today composers, sound designers, and that field. It's good to teach those people and those fields of work and you and everyone on how to do it differently and how to bring it all together, but it's also need to be taught to those who are in the hierarchy traditionally or just practically above. So like you said, and this I think is very important, it's good to speak to directors about at least traditional directors. I think there's also some change here to okay, what is you need to understand about composition or sound design or whatever it is, so that this understanding that comes from here can actually also be seen and taken for granted over there. So it's not that easy. So we have a quite long to way. But what I really appreciate from here today and also from the entire summit is that holistic approach to it. So we're not sitting in our little bubble here. So we're trying to really see it more all together.
Yeah, I think you got a really good point here, because as a director as well, and as a lecturer for me, I always experienced like I wanted to be a democratic director. But then, of course, I had my vision, and there was this intern coming in, suddenly talking to the actor. That's not how it works, you know. So, of course, it's like this. I mean, film teams, film crews. You have all these specialists, and they have to work like this. For one day, and when you do commercials or something, it's like one day, and the whole machine has to be rolling, right? So there needs to be responsibilities, and this is the word I wanted to add. Is I think to be responsible of what your task is and how you can share that with the others, and what your place is in the whole thing that we are doing together. That's something that me as a director and also as a lecturer in these both fields, music and film, that's my approach, and what I see with BIM, for example, also is actually the same what you just mentioned, to be very aware of these people coming in there, trying to create a safe space, and being responsible for letting them grow and helping this, and not just having a creative space. What's creativity without responsibility? I think that's
a whole other panel discussion. An interesting one, though. Yeah, sorry, we're very short on time, but I'd like to hear from both of you.
I really appreciated talking to these educators, people working in education. I feel it's a part of your life that never leaves you, but you sometimes get a bit distant from it. This idea of learning things new, being fresh, being making a system of how to learn together. So that's my take, yeah, that's it.
I'll probably go back to artistic perspective again. So, guys, if anyone is anyone a musician, composer here, or filmmaker? Yeah, most of us. And are you guys like hybrids, or like you're sticking? Yeah, most of us. Yeah, that's like, I think the outtake could be also like, don't like, be reckless, be fearless, try new things. Don't think about it twice. Just fucking do it. And like touch the materia from all the angles you can, with your hands, with your senses, with your feet, with your liquids, whatever you want. But then like somehow, fortunately, and it always happens, it does unfold itself, into some little jam at the end. Like you will get that thing which you were not even aware about when you started to try it, So like, don't put any barriers, don't try to be an expert at the beginning, just like go and, eventually you'll find where, like, from being this little, like, I would say, like, don't worry to be ignorant at the beginning. That's nice too. Just go there and you dig deeper and eventually become an expert by just trying, unexpected things.
What a great point to finish on. I hope this has been an interesting talk to listen in on. Very complex. So just keeps being interesting for me that we're talking about convergent media in such a divergent way. This is a conversation that I'm sure we will continue. And yeah, thank you very much for being here. I wish you a pleasant time at the rest of the festival. Thank you.